In this video, I'll show you some ideas for purposely adding noise and textures into your music projects. So the purpose of adding noise and the context of what I'm showing you today is not about making a song lo-fi. It's about adding some interest or texture or filling out a production that would be otherwise empty. Here's an example. Feels pretty empty with all the digital silence between all the sounds. So let's put on some reverb and see if that improves things. So it's still a little empty sounding, doesn't sound quite right. Let's try putting in some vinyl crackle, sidechain compress it, and we'll do a little bit of volume automation on it as well. It's a subtle effect, but I find this much more interesting to listen to. So in this video, I'll show you several of my favorite noise sources and some things that you can do with them. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning platform for creators with over 25,000 classes on art, design, music, filmmaking, and productivity. It's now one of the first places I look when I want to learn something new. Recently, I watched a couple great classes from Josiah Brooks, also known as Draw with Jazza on YouTube. His How to Talk and Present a Camera Like a Pro class helped me with eye contact when talking to camera. And my last Q&A video was significantly easier to edit because of that tip and the others in that course. I also really enjoy the art classes on Skillshare. Even though I'm not an artist myself, I just find it really interesting to see people share their craft and how they create things. And all of the text overlays in this video were inspired by a course that I watched on Skillshare, Funky Letters, Turn Your Hand Lettering into Epic GIFs by Linda and David. The first 500 people to use the link in the description can get 2 months free of Skillshare Premium, and after that, it's just $10 a month. Thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, for supporting creators not only on their own platform, but also here on YouTube. So my first favorite noise source is vinyl crackles. Now, obviously, vinyl sampling is the thing that has been for years, but anything that you sample off of vinyl instantly has a lot of vibe and character. It's really interesting textures, and it can add a lot to a production. Some people take this to extremes, like the album A Color Map of the Sun by Pretty Lights. He actually wrote all the music, had session musicians perform it all. It was recorded onto analog tape and vintage equipment, printed to vinyl. Then he took that vinyl, ripped it, produced the whole record from those vinyl samples that was his own music, own unique sounds that nobody else had. Really interesting way to produce a record. Certainly not something that I would recommend for the home studio, but I'll show you what I do to get sort of vinyl record sounds. So I've got this cheap record player that has a stereo line out. I just connect that to my portable recorder's line in. The first and last few seconds of a record, the lead in and lead out, will give you some sound of the record without any of the music. Any noise, clicks, and crackles that you get here are all good. Actually, I have a small library that I've been collecting of these sorts of sounds. I don't have a lot of vinyl, but I grabbed a bunch, especially the ones that were dirty. I found that in the lead in and lead outs, there's a lot of interesting sounds, and they all kind of have like a different character. So I found these to be really useful. I'll just play a couple here. So that's a lead out. You can hear that click at the end. So they all have a different sound, and they're all really useful. I reach for these way before I reach for a plugin. If you don't have the means to record these yourself, I actually share these on my Patreon. And actually everything that I'm showing here today that I've recorded for this video will be shared on my Patreon as well. Another classic technique is to use radio static in an intro or an outro of a song. This is a great way to add some interest to the song. Slightly untuned radio static with a bit of vocal bleeding in, or maybe some sort of resemblance of the actual song that's coming up. That can be really interesting. Of course, you can use straight up white or pink noise, fade that in, swell it up. That's cool too, but I find it much more interesting to actually hunt and capture some interesting noise samples yourself. I found a really cool website for doing this. It's an online shortwave radio, and it's interactive, so you can choose where in the frequency range where what do you want to listen to. This can be a time suck. You can spend hours doing this, but there's so many amazing, really awesome, cool sounds. So you can mouse wheel over and zoom in. And you can choose different radio types. Like, what is that noise? And there, you'll be in here. Be zoomed in on a frequency, and you'll just see this little signal come up, and you'll go and chase it, and it's like an adventure to explore this website or to explore all the sounds that you can find here. I don't know what that sound is, but it's cool. You could definitely use that um, to start a song, I think. This website actually has audio recording built in, so another big time saver for you there. I'm going to stop there. If you don't have a purpose with finding specific sounds here, you can just explore this for hours, and it's a lot of fun, but I got a video to make, so I'm going to stop there. So you can use those as a cool way to start a song, but also consider using those as noise sources in a synthesizer. Layer that in with a snare drum as a sort of like a the white noise snare trick. Layer that in, but using radio static, that might be really cool. I think it was last year I had a video on making convolution reverbs just from a pink noise source, a little bit of EQ and fading. I think this could be a really cool starting point for that same technique. Try different radio sounds, use that as your noise source, filter it, and all that in the same way, and see what you get. Up next is field recording. There have been countless songs that start off with rain or traffic or some other ambience that fades out as the band comes in. Last week, I went out to do some recording at a nearby forest park. Now, even though I didn't get top quality recordings, I did get some that are very usable. And even more importantly, I had a great time just sitting there taking in the sounds of the forest. You don't have to have fancy gear for this. This is what I brought. A Zoom H5 with the XY stereo mics, headphones, a tripod, and the real MVP, a folding tripod stool that I got for $4. If you're like me and you've skipped leg day for 34 years, you want to bring a chair. There's a hidden world of sound all around us in the electromagnetic spectrum. You can tap into this world and capture sounds by using an electromagnetic pickup. You can get specialized tools for this, like the Electroslush or the Ether. I'll have links down below to find out more about those. But if you go with the lo-fi route, like I did, you can just use a single coil guitar pickup or the bass guitar pickup that I have here. Just solder on a jack to that, plug into a DI box or straight into the instrument jack of your audio interface. You're gonna have to crank the gain, but you can get some really interesting sounds. The output level is pretty low on this, and the range is very low, but I did get a lot of interesting sounds without even leaving my desk area. When I was hand holding the pickup, I did have to remove a lot of 60 hertz hum, but that was pretty easy to remove. There are a ton of great plugins for adding noise and textures to our projects. Here's just a few that I own and use. First up is Isotope Vinyl. I mostly use this as a filter to make something lo-fi. I could put this on the drum bus for the song intro and make it sound really thin and lo-fi, and then it comes off and it's the full clean sound, or processed in other ways. But it goes from a quiet lo-fi sound to a big, full, over-the-top explosive sound. But that being said, it is really cool to be able to adjust the different amounts of dust and scratch and warp and electrical noise and all that kind of stuff, plus the different kind of EQ curves for the different years. This plugin's been around for a long time. Probably everyone has it now, but don't underestimate it. It's pretty useful. Next up is the RC20 Retro Color from XLN Audio. This is kind of a noise and distortion box. Really cool plugin. Has a bunch of different noise sources built in, so vinyl 1 and 2. Different analog tape, tube, DC noise, big muff, radio static, VHS noise, cassettes, 8-bit. You can do a lot of cool stuff with this. So if you take, let's say, it's vinyl 2, put on some wobble, put on this digital distortion, and then add in this magnetic thing. You can get some pretty cool effects with this. Next one I want to show you is Sweep Machine. It is a virtual instrument made for generating sweep sounds, noise sweeps, trigger from a keyboard, and you use the mod wheel to control the sweep timing. You can also set preset, like 4 bars, sort of thing. What I really like about it is you can mix in different noise shapes like white, pink, brown, blue, violet, all these different noise shapes along with different tuned metal filters. So here's a pink noise with the copper. And here it is with the nickel. And so depending on the key you're playing here, that the metal filter will have a different pitch. So we can even turn off the noise source if the mod wheel's all the way up. Pretty cool sounds in itself. So check that one out. The last one I want to show you is Texture from Devious Machines. And so I have a drum loop here, and I'll just loop that with the plugin off. And I'll bring in texture with the default settings. So what this is doing is taking the dynamics of the input signal and then playing another sound, generating another sound that plays on top of it. There's a lot of basic sort of noise things like electrical noise. There's different like amp hums. Um, or there's digital noise. Um, or there's some really weird things like vocals. Here's a female breath loop. Pretty cool stuff. But check this out. You can drag in your own samples. So I've got, I'm going to take this clap sound. So it sounds like this on its own. That's the clap on its own. And we'll play back this project. So right now it's set to automatically loop. And so we can change the loop length. And I think this is a pretty interesting effect. And we change the pitch of that. You can trigger it once per transient, loop the sample, which makes that sort of buzzy sound. You can randomize it. There's a granular synthesis where it's kind of just taking short chunks from anywhere. Modulation, EQ, lots of options here. This is a really new plugin for me. I only got this, I think, last week. I haven't really had a chance to dig into it, but just what I've seen from it, it's pretty crazy deep and really cool. So there you go. There's a whole bunch of different ideas for using noise in a musical sense. You can take all of these ideas and apply them to sound design as well, of course. Hopefully this has been interesting and inspiring, and hopefully it was a lot of fun to watch as well. There's a couple things that I left out of this list just due to lack of time, but I wanted to talk about layering in different tail sounds for snare drums and things like that, as well as talking about amp hum and feedback and things like that, maybe another time. But for now, thank you so much for watching. Thanks again to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to check the link below for 2 free months of Skillshare Premium membership. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. You can follow me on Facebook and Twitter, support the Reaper blog through Patreon, and visit reaperblog.net for a lot more tutorials.